My model for the video today is another bag of bits from all those months ago where I set aside some interesting parts for what might have been interesting models. In this bag is an elf torso, which comes with a really fancy cloak, so I'm sure you can see where this is going. The cloak isn't the usual style that I've been using for my Tanith First and Only. However, it might just be right for another group of people very closely connected to the Tanith. So hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and today I will be making a warrior of the Nalsheen. This fancy cloak has come from the Wood Elf Wild Riders. Sorry, Sylvaneth Wild Riders, whatever. If you peruse the sprues a little, you'll notice they are for the Sisters of the Thorn as well, just with alternative torsos. And since the Sisters of the Thorn are far cooler, the Wild Rider parts get left over. And lucky for me, that means a fancy cloak. To get started, this torso needs all of the things that usually come with a torso, so I rifled through my bits box to find some arms and legs. Now the Imperial Guard arms are all way too big, muscly Catechans and even big Acadians. I do have some spare elf arms as well, but they aren't really the right theme I'm going for. But then I found the perfect choice: folded arms wrapped around a sniper's rifle. These originate from Devik Designs, a set I did a review of a little while ago. Given the unreliability of 3D printing, I'm in the habit of printing a few extra to ensure I get at least one passable example for the review. And just quickly add some legs and get on to painting. Oh, these legs do not look right at all. Unfortunately, the same issue with the arms applies to the legs, and these are the only set that I have with the right size waist, but they just don't look quite right. While these are originally for a jet bike model, I thought I'd have a go at converting them to kneeling, which turned out to be an awful lot more trouble than it's worth. But I did have an idea. Rather than sitting on a jet bike, now that this model has a sniper rifle, well, the sniper could be sitting on a tree branch. And this is just a little twig from the wide outdoors. Yes, I went outdoors once. What's that smell?
Fresh air.
I like it. The twig was dried in the oven to kill any germs, and then superglued to a base with a little baking powder for strength and a little mud texture. You'll notice I found a hooded head, which surprisingly also came from another Wood Elf kit from before the copyrighted names phase, but I did change the boots to Cadian boots, so there's at least some tiny bit of Imperial Guard Astra Militarum model in here, whatever. Strictly speaking, this model isn't a Gaunt's Ghosts Imperial Guard model, although it will end up in my Gaunt's Ghost army, so there's that, I guess. What this will directly represent is the Nalsheen, an ancient organisation specialising in training of personal combat, the expert use of spears, their signature weapons. But this one has a rifle, I hear you complain, and if you think an ancient warrior caste who value being actually effective in combat is going to turn up their nose at using guns, well, you're thinking illogically. The Nalsheen training in all of the common Imperial weapons, as well as the less well-known civilian stuff that works its way around, is absolutely vital. In the background here, I've been painting some of this model using the same paint scheme as my previous Gaunt's Ghosts models, but I want to try at least a little something different. And the main difference will be that cloak. Rather than my usual green with a fleckled camo, this time I'm keeping it much simpler and overall darker, starting with a dark brown base coat instead of dark green. You know, painting this model with just shoved into blue tack like this isn't very easy, keeps shifting around, so I wonder if the base is ready. Quickly popping back in time, we see a stick, primed in grey and then painted brown, because we paint real wood to look like wood. It seems strange and it's kind of a running joke in the community, but it's actually quite important to make it look like an in-scale tree trunk rather than just a twig I got from the outside. Ow, spiky. Some subtle dry brushing of green and black to give some variety of undertones, followed by a strong dry brush of white. Pure white, straight from the pot, not thinned on the palette, so it's nicely thick for dry brushing. I really like this kind of white mossy look on miniature twigs. I may end up using this a lot more in the future. Well, just about done. I want at least one last feature. A water feature with the water effect resin that I used in my last video. And all it needs now is 48 hours to cure the resin. Thankfully I did this 2 days ago, and so it's ready now. With the model now much more securely stuck to the blue tack, I can finish the cloak. You should be able to see that from the brown base coat, I highlighted into a dark green, instead of highlighting into a lighter colour. Highlighting by hue like this, rather than brightness, I've still kept the impressions of the shape, but the whole thing is kept fairly dark. And that was what I was after at the beginning. The leafy details, however, are very much getting highlighted by brightness. Not only from dark to light green, but actually a little bit of white mixed in just at the top to bring out that detail. And this cloak detail is of course why I wanted to make this one up as a Nalsheen. The Tanith Guard Regiment is famed for using their cloaks for its stealth abilities, using it in both recon and combat missions. And that largely comes from the first of the regiment growing up on a planet with moving trees, the Null trees, covering much of the landmass. With most people's livelihood and everyday life involving finding their way through the shifting foliage, tracking, direction, and in many cases stealth became valuable. But the combat application, the militarization if you will, of these skills comes from the Nalsheen. The endless years of learning, practicing, training and teaching, keeping those knowledge skills alive. Rumour has it that a recent change in the political landscape of Tanith is affected largely by the Nalsheen, overthrowing the Hulahan dynasty. Although in the fighting enough of the Nalsheen were killed that the organisation hasn't recovered and might have died out altogether in short order had a Chaos Splinter Fleet not wiped out the entire population of the planet anyway. Maybe there's some history to look at for another video, but for now, a few more parts of the model. Finishing off with the skin and some tattoos. Loads of tattoos, really loads of tattoos. And my freehanding might not be ideal, and I can't render the elaborate full body woad that I'd really like to. But it's good for practice, and it does come out quite striking. And with some final finishing touches, the model is complete. A warrior of the Nalsheen, perched perfectly for precision shooting. Silent and unmoving. Check the description for links and post a comment about how I did something wrong, or just post a cloak if you don't have anything specific to say. Most importantly, thank you very much for watching. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and I'll see you next time.